Have you ever noticed that you and your partner seem to have the same argument, just in different forms? The words might change, the situation might be new, but somehow you end up in that same place again, hurt, frustrated, and disconnected. That's not random. That's a pattern, and that's your relationship cycle. Hi, I'm Kathleen, and I'm a relationship therapist and coach, and I help couples connect. Today, I want to talk about something that shows up in every relationship: cycles and patterns. What they are, how they form, how to recognize them, and most importantly, how to shift them. So, what is a cycle or pattern in a relationship? A cycle is the repeated emotional dance between two people, the loop you both get stuck in when conflict or disconnection shows up. It's not about who started it or who's right. It's actually about what's happening between you. For example, one person gets triggered and withdraws. The other person feels abandoned and reaches out, maybe with frustration or criticism. The first person feels attacked, so they pull away even more, and round it goes. That's a cycle. It's the emotional choreography you both know by heart, even if you don't want to. So how do these patterns form? Most patterns begin as protection. They come from how we learn to manage closeness, conflict, and safety early in life. This is where attachment theory helps us understand what's happening. If you grew up with inconsistent care, sometimes emotionally available, sometimes not, you might have learned to pursue closeness when you feel anxious. If you grew up with caregivers who were intrusive or critical, you might have learned to pull away to feel safe. Neither is bad, they're both adaptations. But when two different adaptations meet in an intimate relationship, and they often do, they can create friction. One person says, "You're not here for me." And the other says, "You're always upset with me." Both feel unseen, both feel misunderstood, and both are just protecting themselves. That's how a pattern forms. One person's coping strategy triggers the other person's, and before you know it, you're in a loop that feels impossible to escape. I often get asked the question, are there multiple cycles or just one? Most couples have one core cycle that plays out in different ways. It can show up around money, parenting, intimacy, household tasks, but underneath, it's the same emotional pattern. But within our cycle, there can be variations, smaller patterns that branch off depending on the situation. So yes, there may be several smaller loops, but they're usually connected to one larger emotional rhythm that repeats over time. When couples start to identify that core pattern, everything begins to make more sense. How do you start to recognize your pattern? Well, you can start by asking yourself a few questions. When things go wrong, what do I tend to do first? Do I get louder or do I get quieter? What does my partner tend to do in response? How do I feel right before I react? Scared, dismissed, criticized, alone? And what's the story that I'm telling myself about my partner in that moment? It helps to literally write this out like a map. For example, when I feel dismissed, I raise my voice. When I raise my voice, my partner shuts down. And when they shut down, I feel more dismissed. See how that forms a loop? That's your cycle. Most people don't realize they're reacting to their own pain, not their partner's current behavior. That's why the same fight keeps happening, because the deeper emotional need underneath it hasn't been named yet. Beneath every reactive pattern are two vulnerable truths: a fear, something we're afraid might happen; a longing, something we deeply want but don't know how to ask for. For example, the partner who gets angry might actually be scared of not mattering, and the one who shuts down might be afraid of failing or being rejected. When you can name those fears and longings, you stop seeing each other as enemies and start seeing the pain underneath the behavior. That's the beginning of healing. So now that we know this, what do we do about it? Well, recognizing your cycle is the first step, but awareness alone isn't going to cut it. You actually have to learn how to interrupt it. Here's how. Step 1, slow it down. When you notice the pattern starting, take a pause. You might even say, "I think we're in our cycle right now." That simple acknowledgement changes the energy. It takes you from reacting to reflecting. Step 2, take responsibility for your part. Instead of you always shut down, try when you get quiet, I start to panic and I realize I go into blame mode. That shift from accusation to ownership opens space for connection. Step 3, get curious about the deeper feelings. Ask yourself, what's the fear underneath this? What do I actually need right now? That's how you move from defensiveness to vulnerability. Step 4, repair. All couples fall into their cycle, even the healthiest ones. The difference is healthy couples repair faster. Repair sounds like, I got scared and I reacted. Can we try that again? It's not about avoiding conflict. It's about finding each other again afterward. Attachment theory teaches us that we're wired for connection. When our bond feels threatened, our nervous system reacts, not because we're broken, but because we actually care. So instead of seeing your cycle as the problem, see it as information. It's showing you where the fear lives, and it's pointing you towards what needs healing. For one couple, it might be about reassurance. I need to know I matter. For another, it might be about safety. I need to know you'll still love me even when I mess up. When you can talk about those needs instead of defending against them, you begin to transform the cycle from something that will divide you into something that will deepen your connection and bring you together. You can break this pattern together. The goal isn't to never have a cycle, it's to recognize it faster and recover sooner. Every time you repair, every time you stay curious instead of reactive, you're rewiring your nervous system together. That's the real work of love, not perfection, but awareness and courage. Because when you can see the pattern, name it, and own your part in it, you take away its power. And what's left is empathy, tenderness, and possibility. So if you and your partner keep getting stuck in the same loop, you're not broken, you're just human. You're being invited to grow, to heal, and to see each other more clearly. When we understand our cycles, we stop fighting the wrong battle and we start working together against the pattern and not against each other. Thank you so much for being here. Take care of your heart, your connection, and each other. And I'll see you next time.